Welcome to Pharma Prescribed Podcast. I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant looking to uncover the real stories behind life science leaders in clinical research. Today's guest is Philip Morisky, who serves as Chief Optimus at Adherence, leading the company's mission to revolutionize global medication adherence. Under his leadership, Adherence is transforming from a clinical assessment developer into a global health technology company, while maintaining the scientific integrity and validation that has made MMAS the gold standard in adherence measurement. Philip, welcome to the show.
I'm very honored to be here today.
Great to see you today. And I thought maybe we could start by you telling us how you came into the industry and how you find yourself here today.
Yeah, so adherence, it's more than just a concept or a company. You know, healthcare doesn't work if people don't follow through. And what I've seen is that healthcare is really focused on behavioral change over time. That's what adherence is: maintaining your regimen, being consistent, and sticking to it. The MMAS is actually called the Morisky Medication Adherence Scale. It's a tool that was originally developed by my father, Dr. Donald Morisky. He is a behavioral scientist with his doctorate at Johns Hopkins. Had a almost 40-year career at UCLA School of Public Health in behavioral sciences, community health sciences.
Wow. So, dare I say it, you're following very large footsteps of your father. Does he still keep involved in day-to-day activity?
He's happily retired. He has 5 grandchildren between my brother and I, 2 boys from myself and 3 girls from my brother. He's just enjoying life, traveling, and seeing what great things that I've been doing.
That's really amazing. So is it fair to say that he might fulfill that category in the fact that he's opened an avenue and a door into an industry that perhaps you might not have otherwise find yourself?
He is. He's a real mentor for me. I really looked up to him for what he's done. And just to rewind a bit, let me just go ahead and talk about how I came to be here. When I was a little kid, I was always that one kid that always asked why. You know what I'm talking about? When the teacher says, hey, don't do that. Or your mom says, okay, time to go to bed. I always ask why. Even if it made sense, I would be the one who says, why not? I wasn't trying to be difficult, but I really believed that every rule and every behavior, there had to be like a root cause, or there had to be a reason for it. And if there wasn't, we have a right to change it.
That's really interesting that you say that. I think we probably have lots of listeners who are themselves very obsessed about the details and certainly ask the questions why all the time. I've spoken to many people over the years who identify their why as being something that connects them to helping other people, something that really drives their passion every day. What is it, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning then?
I wasn't actually background in medicine or healthcare. It's actually in leadership and management. I went to my master's program, graduated with a business degree, and I built 2 successful companies, and I exited them successfully even before I entered the health space. I've always kind of followed and shadowed my dad and went to some of the conventions that he spoke at, and he was a professor. So I went to UCLA hanging out with him and talking to his students and his colleagues. And what drew me to the science of medication, it was the mystery of why people aren't adhering to their medication regimens 100% of the time. They're not consistent with it. That's what I was really focused on.
So what do you think is the reason why people don't adhere to their medications? What are some of the reasons why people don't?
It's not really the science of it. It's more of like, it's the silence of it. So nobody's really asking the right questions about their behavior. I mean, we're pouring resources into these treatment plans, but we're not checking whether anyone actually is following them. So when we ask questions, sometimes we ask it the wrong way. If the doctor asked you, you take your medications, right? What would be the first thing you say?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, you probably have your fingers crossed behind your back and say, of course, doctor, you know, I always take my medications. So I think that's where nobody wants to disappoint their doctor. And that's what my father actually kind of pointed out to me when we talked about how you develop this tool. Why don't we just rephrase that question? If I asked you, do you sometimes forget to take your medication?
I haven't forgotten to take my medication, but the timing of it might not be the same time every day.
Yeah, but the whole point is that it's not accusatory. It's just an honest question. You're saying sometimes. So the word sometimes really opens up, it turns the guilt into the truth. It's more of a conversation, and that's what builds the insight into it.
It's really interesting because, from this point of view and having an open conversation with you today, the whole point of having general conversations is to ask open questions, isn't it? Because the yes, no answers are the ones that don't get the answers that anyone wants to hear.
Yeah. I mean, people don't want to fail their health. They want the health to stop failing them. That's how I really, that's a kind of a little, pressure point that I've always thought about.
And I think the other aspect of that is, of course, if you're not from a background of clinical research or life sciences, you don't necessarily connect action with outcome. And I think what we've seen over the last few years, particularly thinking about the pandemic and COVID, has been action and outcome. In other words, did you take the vaccine or did you decline the vaccine? Did you get COVID? Were you very poorly as a result of it? What was the outcome of that? And I think people have experienced that firsthand over the last few years, but also there is an understanding of the language around clinical research, drug trials, and pandemics more generally.
Yeah, I mean, we're really coming up with these new methods and patient-reported outcome measures. It's really a tool that's getting that subjective validation into the system. We still have the objective measures like the pharmacy refill data, but to introduce the patient voice, let us listen to their story. They have a lot to say. Let us bring that patient back into the mix and get their honest responses. Because obviously, if you ask the questions the wrong way, they're going to answer the wrong way. They're not going to give you the right response. So what the MMAS does, it avoids that social desirability bias. It avoids time recall bias. And those are the two of the biggest reasons why most adherence surveys actually fail.
Yeah.
We're really getting this honest answers and the right timing as far as the responses.
It's a really interesting point you make there, because I remember historically working on many clinical trials where there were patient diaries. And in the old days, people would complete them just outside the doctor's room, wouldn't they, on paper, bring them in. And of course, they'd all be collected at very similar time points, when in fact, the reality that we know now with patient-recorded outcome devices and ePros is entirely different. And I think there was always a sense that people were embellishing or telling different stories to the reality, but now we can actually see that. Do you use the MMAS score alongside ePros and various other measures?
As far as what I do, I work directly with sponsors, big pharma, and help develop the protocol. Typically, the PI or the principal investigator will already have an idea of how they want it structured. I would just steer them into what works. If it's an observational trial or if it's an interventional trial, we'll come up with the subsets of questions and how to use this tool to the best of its ability. Really focus on driving those responses correctly, making sure that the patients understand the questions in its entirety, especially when we translate it into different languages. We have a big library, a robust library of intricate dialects from larger nations down to just standard East. Yeah, so that.
It sounds very far-reaching. And I remember when we previously spoke, you told me about the extent of the countries that this covers, and it's into the hundreds, isn't it? The translations are into the hundreds of the world.
And some of the unique languages that we're actually working on, it could really tell how vast this tool is reaching. I mean, we're translating dialects in Ethiopia, even New Zealand, in the Maori language. There is a population that could really benefit from this inexpensive, very useful, and very easy to decipher tool. So my goal is to get into the smallest country or the smallest village to the largest metropolitan area. Everybody should be able to use this tool properly and correctly and efficiently.
That sounds amazing. For any particular investigators that are running clinical trials that may be listening to our podcast, what kind of information can you share with them about how this would work for them?
I'm always up for collaborating, working with academic institutions. In fact, I have a memorandum of understanding. So essentially, I have a collaboration with already over 300 universities and teaching hospitals around the world. We put academics first, non-funded thesis and dissertations. I really emphasize that. I have built a platform called Atlas, an acronym for Adherence Tools and Location Analytics System. What it does is it's taking all this empirical data, this structured raw data from the MMAS scores, and it's populating it onto a visual map. And eventually, my goal is to provide real-time data on adherence levels, low, moderate, or high. And The WHO has always emphasized that nearly half the population, or 50%, is a threshold or benchmark of our non-adherence. Well, how do we justify that? And that's what the MMAS does. It's a measurable tool and it's a manageable outcome.
That's very impressive. And now I'm remembering the demonstration that you gave me some time ago where you showed that real world platform where you can point across the globe to see adherence for particular therapeutic areas.
I think May 27, I did launch a landmark test, so to speak, and we've received over, I believe, 1,500 responses all around the world from different countries in real time. And it kind of gave us a bird's eye view where adherence levels are and where the opportunity that we combine social determinants of health, age, sex, marital status, education, all those factors, and we could look at adherence levels. We can actually come up with ideas on how to better manage these areas. If it's low adherence and the demographics point to low income, we could have educational trainings or educational reaches to show people that these tools or medication adherence is important. If you want to manage your symptoms, if you want a quality of life, we have regimens built into the system that work for you. Medication adherence, or non-adherence, I should say, it's really broken up to intentional and unintentional behavior. So once we benchmark that and we know where our patients stand, then we could develop the resources and the solutions. You can't just throw app reminders and pill boxes to 100% of the population and say, now these patients are going to stick to the regimen. Because some patients stop taking their medication because of side effects.
Yes.
And they don't tell their doctor, which is one of the questions in the MMAS tool. Thinking over the past 2 weeks, was there a time when you didn't tell your doctor that you stopped taking your medications? That's a huge miss for a lot of patients, that when they come into the doctor's office, the doctor thinks they're taking their medication, but they stopped 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. And I think because of the nature of healthcare, both in the States and across the globe, it's not easy to access doctors, more generally, general practitioners. I'm fortunate I can see through my window. I live next door to my healthcare provider. So I'm very fortunate I can knock on their door and they know me on first name terms, but that's quite rare. Certainly in the UK and I think across the globe, and in the US, it's a very different model, isn't it? So access to medication, access to care is very, very different.
Yeah. So the MMAS was originally built into the clinical research arena. Researchers, students, and clinical trials. Clinical trials is our main vertical right now. Sponsors or CROs would leverage it as an outcome or endpoint measure. But what I'm really focused on is bringing this to standards of care. What comes from clinical study could really lead to clinical practice. It's been validated 100 times over, different languages, different medical conditions. And it's a simple tool that if we could integrate this into an EHR system, so many physicians would definitely benefit from it. And that's where I'm really focusing my efforts on, to educate companies, remote patient monitoring platforms, to use this tool, to use these questions. Very simple, but very effective. And that's what the goal is right now.
So that sounds like a very heavy lift.
So what I've actually built, and I've worked with several partners on this, is an AI enhanced agent. And as long as we have a structured protocol like the MMAS, AI could really enhance that aspect of it. And you could really scale it up as far as getting pharmacists the data that they need, rather than spend 10 minutes of a physician's time asking these questions. How simple would it be that physician or pharmacist could get a patient profile, identified whether they're low adherent and the reasons behind it, their barriers to adherence, whether it's intentional behavior, like they don't think the medication works, or they're, like I said, side effects, or if it's unintentional behavior, like they just have problems remembering. Maybe an app reminder would be beneficial, or maybe changes in their routine. There's also a difference between problems remembering and just simply forgetting, because when you have problems remembering, you don't really have that cue to action. Similar to like brushing your teeth. Your focus, you say brushing your teeth is good for you. It avoids a lot of problems with your health. Sometimes you have to have that in the same aspect of medication taking behavior. So one thing that adherence is really focused on, and I've learned a lot, even though I don't have a behavioral science background, I've read so many research papers on this, adherence could be applied to so many other aspects. And that's one thing I'm working on right now is developing derivatives, enhanced MMAS tools, focused on smoking cessation, alcohol, exercise, and diet. These are all behaviors that you could apply the foundation of the MMAS and really go into that behavior aspect of why patients continue to smoke even though they want to stop. I mean, that's huge right there.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you touched on cessation of smoking, but also I think there are so many things that we're aware of these days with regards to the direct impact of those choices. I mean, smoking, highly addictive, nicotine products are everywhere. I mean, I'm so aware of them these days. I was out the other night with my wife at a music concert and an advert for these pouches that go under your tongue. Snus, I think they're called. They're from Sweden. And I couldn't believe that they were allowed to be advertised on these big screens all over the place, because to me, that's the tobacco product. So I wasn't entirely clear how they managed to circumvent the rules, certainly in the UK, about tobacco advertising. And it was a conversation that we had. And you just reminded me of it because it's everywhere. And there are many different ways in which big companies get their products out there. Similarly, ultra high processed foods, same thing. Why do people go back to unhealthy choices? Because it's highly addictive, because it's very difficult to break the cycle, because it's actually now harder to cook food in its raw state than it is to take something out of a packet that's already pre-packed, pre-prepared, straight in. It's literally an instant fix, isn't it? Instant calories.
And that's why I built the library. And the library is a collaboration of all these derivatives in using the MMAS as a foundational structure. And going back to the AI aspect of it, we can actually really benchmark. And I think the term benchmark is used very loosely nowadays. Pharmacy refill data has been, in my opinion, a disservice to the actual medication taking behavior. Pharmacy refill data really focuses on access to medications, and that's completely not what medication adherence actually is. And now we're seeing 90 and 100-day refills that really skew the data. I mean, it's a checkbox that the patient got their medication, so we assume that they took it. The pharmacist or the payer gets paid, and everybody's happy. Well, everybody's not really happy because we don't know if that patient stockpiles or doesn't even receive it, especially with mail order pharmacy nowadays. You can get your Amazon deliveries in Pirate Thieves, or you throw it into your medicine cabinet and you just forget about it.
It's absolutely true. I think delivery does not necessarily connect with uptake, does it? So what is the answer to that?
Yeah, it's a hybrid approach. I think pharmacy refill data has its benefits, especially from high level oversight, but including or bringing the patient's voice into that definitely helps out. And that's why I built tools like Zoe Adherence, which is the AI agent. And it's not just a chatbot where you have to say yes and you have to say no. You can just have a conversation like we. It captures all that data, all the nuances, and provides it to that pharmacist or the physician. They could really benefit. They could use it for a pharmacist-led intervention. This is another thing that I'm really focusing on. Pharmacists, community pharmacy has really changed and morphed over the years. In the United States, there's a lot of retail pharmacies closing. And now community pharmacy is really enhancing their capabilities, their expertise as far as how they could work directly with the patient with all their knowledge of motivational interviewing, medication therapy management, even precision medicine. These are all expertise ideas that pharmacists have. So I'm really focused on developing a training program, actually, and I call it Expert. And it's also on my website. And it's a 3-level of training focusing on how to use the MMAS as a foundational interventional tool.
So you touched on a couple of points there that I just wanted to ask you about. Has the awareness of AI and the tools around it particularly changed for you recently? Because certainly in many other conversations I'm having, I'm aware that the access to these very cost-effective tools now can really transform the work that we're doing. How's that been for you?
Oh, yeah, it's been phenomenal. I've had so much interest, and I'm already trying to put together some pilot programs just to prove the efficacy of it, because we know it's going to work. We know these tools are valuable and reliable. And it's just a matter of identifying how the system works, how the ecosystem, who gets paid, etc. That's where the challenge is, but it's also an adventure as well, because I'm learning so much in the past couple of months. I've been working with lots of big companies who really see the value and the benefit of this. It's been an amazing journey.
So presumably there's development alongside licensing costs and backroom tech. How is that working in developing this platform and the tools as you go forward?
I've built so many integral partners. What I've learned is the MMAS is not a standalone tool. Partnerships are key. Working with people who are already specialized in certain aspects of the entire ecosystem can really put a tool out there that's scalable, replicable, and efficient. And I think that's where the magic really happens.
And for potential clients of yours, are you talking about earliest intervention at the protocol development stage? Is that the kind of time when you would be involved in conversation?
At all times. Right now, I'm working with the Kingdom of Bhutan, which is a small kingdom near Tibet, somewhere around East Asia. They're on World Adherence Day, they actually really embraced the MMAS as a pharmacist interventional tool. And so I'm working with them now to see how we could integrate it into the hospitals that they run through the Ministry of Health. So that's an exciting development that I'm working on. I have so many collaborations with universities using this tool and validating it. So many new developments with these derivatives, and even the MMAS as a standard scale. I'm working on realigning it to bring it to a more modern aspect and a higher sensitivity, higher specificity. Really, the psychometric properties could be enhanced with very minor changes.
That sounds amazing. Your father must be incredibly proud. I wonder if he ever dreamed that it would get to where it is now and perhaps where it might be in the future.
He's always been a behavioral scientist, so he never really had the business aspect to him. He was really focused on educating his students, and he really emphasized the concept of beneficence, taking what we have and giving back, not just giving it away, but similar to the way those instructions are structured. It's not just taking in information. We're giving back to the patient in the form of, hey, you're not adherent because of this. And so it differs from just a standard survey where they ask questions and then company who asks the questions get all this data, but the patient is kind of left like, hey, I just provide you all this valuable data. What do I get out of it? So I think that's where his whole mantra was when he thought about medication adherence.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. So presumably not having a background in behavioral science, you've learned a lot in and around this space, but also you're coming into contact with people perhaps who have a very different background to you. How do you overcome that kind of credibility point? Do you ever come across people who say, well, you shouldn't be talking about this because it's not your thing? Show me all your qualifications, because academics can be quite difficult to deal with at times, can't they?
Yeah, it is. I'm smart in my own aspect, but I do surround myself with globally recognized pharmacists who do give me their background. In fact, this training and protocol that I'm working on, that I'm really pushing out there, working with big pharmacies who are interested in these patient support programs. So it only comes naturally that I work with them directly, leverage their expertise. So it's a really collaborative effort. I mean, if I'm not good at one thing, I know somebody who is.
You come to a point of pattern recognition, presumably, as well, where you've seen things in different settings and perhaps those translate in different countries and geographies based upon requirements that you find in front of yourself.
Yeah. And everybody sees exactly what I'm trying to do here and how motivated I am in improving the patient experience, bringing this tool that it's highly recognizable and highly reliable out in the open. It's kind of like a hidden secret, but we don't want it to be a hidden secret. I think people are embracing my motivation in this. I would love that it could be the standard of care in medication adherence all around the world. That's my biggest goal, translating it into as many languages as there are. And going forward, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Just to partner with this Atlas platform that I'm developing, the library, which is a curated group of behavioral science and hypothesis generating tools that are ready for validation, ready for translation, and just ready for collaboration. That's where I'm at about this.
It sounds absolutely awesome, and really kudos to you for taking it forward in the manner in which you have. And clearly the success that you're going to have we'll build on everything. And hopefully this will give you that platform to a wider audience as well to really speak about the capabilities of your MMAS scales and how that might develop in the future. So do you have specific plans for the future? What does that look like for you for the next few years ahead?
There is definitely a roadmap to the future of success. Monetarily, success is always good, but more importantly, it's bringing this tool, working with hospital systems, working with pharmacists, and just meeting new people and being invited to travel all around the world is what I'm really motivated for. I'm still young enough to be able to make an impact. And I know there's a lot of challenges with value-based care, and I'm just taking the punches and rolling with them.
That's really impressive. Dare I ask then, what is the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning? What is your true why?
My kids, boys, I have two boys. They're both in college now. So my youngest one just graduated high school. And now my wife and I feel like we're empty nesters. But my youngest chose a college close enough to home that we could continue to watch him play water polo, which he's actually really good at. And he actually got recruited to the school for it. But also to be able to take him to dinner once in a while. And I'm sure my wife wants to do his laundry as many times as possible. So they are my motivation. But I look at it that I have kids all around the world as well. The fact that I want to be able to educate everybody on this valuable tool that my father actually developed. And it's amazing how many people embrace it, from the youngest scholars who are really interested in making a difference in their own community to seasoned veterans of healthcare that are very familiar with the tool. They probably learned it when they were in their healthcare studies. And now executives of these big corporations work with me directly to help leverage this tool as an endpoint measure. So I'm very grateful to all the connections that I've made over the years.
We're talking about your kids. I'm just wondering, of either of them intending to take this forward as you have from your father?
No, that's always a dream, but raised two black sheep. One wants to go turn into a pirate. He wants to sail the seven seas as a merchant marine, and the other one wants to do cybersecurity science. So I'm very proud of both of them, and I'm always supportive of what they do. So my goal is to be the best at what I do. And that's actually brings me into why I coined my title as Chief Optimus. Optimus is Latin for the best, and I always strive to be the best. So I just embraced it and say, hey, CEO is a good title. Think outside the box for a change. Let's stir things up, that cog in the system that people...
It's a standout title. It's not one I've come across before. So I think you deserve recognition for that particular point. If we all were to follow the same path, many of the inventions that we now take for granted would not be around. Be the change, be the difference. And by the sounds of it, in everything that you're doing that with the best of intentions, and also with that in mind, changing the status quo, not accepting what that status quo might look like, and indeed, rewriting that narrative.
Right, exactly. Yep.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing so much around your backstory, Philip. I think it's fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners will have enjoyed listening to that. I think it strikes me as a very interesting path that you've taken, and no two careers are the same, but certainly I'm sure when you finished high school and did your qualifications, you couldn't have anticipated the future that you were now looking at and that you're now experiencing. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, no, I was successful. As I mentioned earlier, I was successful in two other startup companies, and it's given me the foothold to really embrace what my father actually started and just kind of continue, not necessarily his legacy, but his ideas and his beliefs. There was one book that I do remember reading. It's called The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. Very exciting book. It basically defines structured adherence, and it's definitely a good book to read.
You've jumped ahead to my quick fire round. Going back, go on to the quick fire round if now is a good time. We've touched upon your younger self, but what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self, do you think?
I would say mess up early and often. And I say that because I've messed up a lot learning the ropes and stuff. And now that I'm older, I say, man, if I just messed up earlier and I did it more often, I think I could have been slightly different. Although I am happy where I am today. So I like the way it sounds. Mess up early and often. That's something that you could see in your high school yearbook as far as your personal quote.
It's great. I love that one. It reminds me of one that I have, which is fail fast and fall forwards, which
There
is
you
not
go. Yeah.
dissimilar. Same sort of principle. Don't sweat the small stuff. Just keep moving forward. As long as you're moving forward, it's going to be okay. So what are the 3 top qualities that you look for most when you're building a team? Presumably, you've identified particular skill sets and likes around the people that you work with. What would they be?
I have a very small but enthusiastic group that's spearheading a lot of these initiatives that I'm taking on. And it's a little bit overwhelming, but the 3 qualities that I look for is curiosity, imagining new care systems and embracing this tool as their own resilience. We've faced so many fires and so many barriers similar to medication adherence. We have barriers and we just have to identify the right solutions. And then transparency, radical transparency. I think those 3 unique qualities make an overall person valuable as a core asset.
That radical transparency. That is
not just transparency. You got to be radical about it. You got to embrace it and take it to the next level.
And presumably that's personal, that's professional. It's both, isn't it? The 2 go hand in hand. Well, certainly I find the 2 should connect, but if they don't, that's where I have a disconnect, particularly around that radical transparency, because what you say and what you do should lead into all aspects of both your daily work life, but also your daily personal life as well. So if you're not singing from the same hymn sheet, it certainly comes across very quickly, doesn't it?
So I could actually see the true intentions of other people.
Yes.
Definitely. There's so many people I meet on LinkedIn and all these other social medias, but there's only a very few selective people that I really embrace and want to take to that next conversation. And life is about conversations. And I could see how people see genuine and true intentions of people, and they're always just encouraging them to move forward, and they'll open the doors and give me opportunities and give other people opportunities too.
What is your favorite thing outside of work? What is it that drives you?
I mentioned that my son plays water polo. He had a fruitful career in high school and club, and now he's at that collegiate level, Division III. So very, very excited to continue watching him play at the next level. Even just sitting on the stands and making friends with a lot of the parents of his teammates really gives us interesting moments and networks. I used to run in high school, so I love running with my dog. I have a husky who is very active and keeps me on my feet. If I don't run her every day, she'll scratch the door and scratch furniture. That gives me my 1 hour, 5-mile run every morning, and just living life and enjoying it. Those are the things that really drive me to do what I do and to do it as best as I can.
That's wonderful. And finally, what is your number 1 golden rule in life and business?
I didn't think about that one.
Well, I think you probably touched on it, which is consistency of behavior, those curiosities, the transparencies, and all of those things.
I guess I could say adherence is the missing metric in healthcare. I want to fix that. And I think we could fix that together.
I like that.
I actually just made that up right at the top of my head. But it really came across as something very poignant and impactful. I think that's what we need.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you sharing the detail and the background to the company Adherence, the MMAS. And I think our listeners will have enjoyed learning and getting to know you a little bit more. I'd like to just give you the opportunity to share how people can reach out to you and make contact with you if they want to after listening to the podcast, Philip.
Yeah, no, I'm very reachable. I'm on LinkedIn. That's social media. My website is adherence.cc. So just the word adherence.cc. And you can just find me at many conventions. I like to travel around the world and attend conventions. I've always connected with people, walking through the trade show halls and doing podcasts. You're my 3rd podcast. The time just went by so fast because of this basic conversations. It's like these interventions that I like to emphasize with the pharmacist talks to the patient, and the patient could really just tell their story, how it is. And that's one thing that I think it's critical in helping not only clinical trials be more efficient and effective, but also improving patient outcomes as a whole, bringing the uniqueness of what the patient says, but using a structured format so that we could actually benchmark it and see improvement over time.
I think it's a great summary and a really lovely place to end there, Philip. Thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been an absolute delight listening to you and talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better. I can't thank you enough, and I hope you will share this far and wide.
Thank you, Adam. Very, very impressed.